And there it is.
Hey, Internet, how's it going? So, there is nobody here, but hopefully soon people will begin joining us. But I'm just going to start talking just in case people tune in later and, like, why are they just staring at the screen for 5 minutes? We're not doing that.
Yeah, that'd be awkward for
I
reading.
am, I am, I am Matt Rhys, also known as Rhys, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Mattriarchy. So, with me as well is Matt McGibson, also known as Matt McGibson, from the sunny Maryland. I don't know what's the weather like there, Matt.
Um, I don't know. A lot of people describe us as being very boring. There's no, at least out in the middle of the country, you get tornadoes and stuff like that. We have,
Yes, all of our wonderful tornadoes. They're the
I know
best.
you guys are just hogging them. I think if we got to round you up, redistribute the tornadoes because apparently there's never been one in Maryland. Like it's
No, there won't be. It's tornadoes only occur a few places on Earth because they take very specific geographic and climate conditions to form.
yeah. And we've just
So
got hills and trees.
So the middle of Nebraska, they've got to be relatively flat areas that are prone to extreme high hot and extreme cold and extreme high and low pressure. And they've got to have all of those things in the mix. So we get tornadoes and Spain. And I think they're the only places in the world that are in that temperate zone that have the right terrain that aren't like too mountainous or too cold and not hot or too hot and not cold. We're like the it. So middle America and like one part of Spain are the only place like cyclones exist.
Huh.
I mean, and that's not entirely true because they do form over water. They call them water spouts. So that happens.
That's a little that's
You
underselling
never
it.
hear about them like in the Himalayas because there's the terrain's wrong, and you never hear about them in like Africa because it's too hot and flat, it doesn't get cold enough. So
This has been weather stuff. This is the first part
I'm
of
a
the.
fount of useless trivia. That's one of the things I'm known for. People
You
ask
know,
me,
my useless trivia, except
I
for like
said
some
they
things.
don't. People
Um,
ask me why I don't teach, and they don't. Don't go to school for random crap. So no one's ever gotten a degree in random crap. So they can't pay me for it.
that would be my job. See, like there's so much stuff that's useless that I remember more than the important stuff. I won't remember some like I don't know. I don't know anything, or I don't remember anything from reading about Martin Van Buren, other than apparently he was the man to coin the term "okay." Like that's what stuck with me. Not anything he actually did, but the okay or him coining okay apparently.
See, I didn't know that. I did know he's the only U.S. president whose first language wasn't English.
Oh really? Oh, see, something like that should have stuck with me. Like it's been years. Like I did this at the beginning of high school. Um, but I can't believe I wouldn't remember something like that. What was the language?
Dutch.
Hmm.
Yeah, he was old New York Dutch. Because as you may remember from the They Might Be Giants song, old New York was once New Amsterdam. So, and the New York was first populated by Dutch immigrants and the Van Burens, which of course it means from Buren. It's a place name. And that's a so yeah. His family he grew up speaking Dutch as a first language and learned English in school. So
You figured there'd be more windmills in New York City then.
the windmills are more practical than aesthetic. You see,
They're
because
kind of intimidating. It's like having a saw blade on a building.
I'm sorry.
It's kind of intimidating. It's like having a big saw blade on a building. I'm okay.
Well,
I'm
yeah,
gonna use that
but
now.
it's purely born from necessity. Because I don't know if you know this. A lot of people do. A lot of people don't. But Holland was built underwater, right? As they were pushed to the sea, and so they kept coming up with technologies to move the ocean further away. And all of the windmills are there to pump water back into the ocean.
Huh.
And so they actually, I saw a special on the television on this thing where they're talking about fixing windmills, and like they took the cameras inside of one of these old windmills, the entire works were made of rope and wood, all the gear mechanisms and everything. And so the White House, I mean, the windmill miller would have to go in and disable the windmill and actually oil all of the surfaces to keep the wood young acting so that it wouldn't crack and everything. And they had to, and this family had been maintaining windmills for like 5 generations.
By the way, I'm not echoing too much, am I?
I'm not catching it. Am I echoing? I don't have the headphones in.
No, I see. I don't either, and that's what's kind of surprising me is if you're not hearing echo because it's typically how these things work. I'm gonna
this is a new computer, and I think it actually shuts off the speaker when I'm talking, so it doesn't pick up on it.
Yeah, I noticed that just a second ago when you weren't talking, and like I was rambling on about Martin Van Buren. A little mute came up, or the silenced microphone came up. I think it was half.
I actually did that because I have a frog in my throat, and when I'm speaking, it like tends to settle down. But the minute I stop, it starts to croak and ribbit and try to jump out, and so I don't want other people to have to listen to that. That's pretty awful.
I'm gonna try to pull up this stream on
We,
YouTube.
in fact, have 2 viewers, but I don't have a way open to see the chat.
I'm gonna pull it up.
So,
I have my phone with me. It's on decent charge, so because I absolutely love talking to people in the chat.
yeah, I think it's an important part of the experience. So, okay, folks, I'm going to my beautiful face, the hairy old psoriatic face, off of the camera for a second because the flannel is a little warm tonight. So, hang on a moment. But that way you won't get too shaken as I'm moving around. So
Nacho's here.
Nachos?
Nachos. I know he's British, so I don't
know. I just ate at Runza.
Oh man. So yeah, we have Nachos in here. That makes me very happy.
Oh, okay. That's who's in the chat.
Yeah, sorry, I'm reading. Yeah, he pops up. He's just saying he hears no echo. So he's a buddy of mine from Twitter.
Oh yeah. I think I've actually seen him around there, but I thought you were talking about just nachos in general and as just saying random stuff. So I was very confused for a moment.
I mean, I'll admit I am prone to doing that sometimes, but no, this time it actually is linked to the conversation or to what's going on in the stream. Yeah, I remember one day he was talking to me about his eating habits. He was talking about anchovies and French fries with mayonnaise and stuff like that. And I had this idea that I would go out I'd like make a video of myself reading that tweet. I'd go out to the store, find some nachos, I'd bring them back home, I'd like throw them on the ground and like stomp on them or something.
Well, that's very rude, Matt. That's very rude.
I'm just like, he knows I'm just messing with him though.
Well,
he's also like he's a teacher of sorts. He teaches me all these things about oh, see, now he's talking about black pudding and pork pies. We're both Irish descendant here, so we both know what black pudding is. But pork pie, what is that like an actual pie with pork in it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. They're smaller than our American pies typically. Now, here's a little tidbit for you, talking about the weird random crap that I know. So pie, I'm actually going to switch my camera back on here. So you'll have to deal with my messy office because I didn't want to hold the thing in my lap anymore. Pie, as we know it today in America, was invented in America. Like pies existed in the old world, but they were mostly meat pies, right? So in America, we had, when the early colonists were here, we had so much fruit and everything that was just such an abundance because of our soil here is frankly better than most of the world's, especially at that time, that there was such an abundance of crops. Once things got settled up, they needed to have something to do with all the apples and peaches and berries and everything. So they put them inside of meat pies without the meat, and the fruit pie was an American invention. So when you hear somebody say that it's as American as apple pie, they're not wrong, because we invented apple pie here. Now,
that was clawing at the back of my brain for such a long time. Like I wanted to know what the origin of that phrase was, and if apple pies actually were American.
they are, my friend. Now,
But if
that
the British
also
came
is
up with
that.
mayonnaise French fries, they can keep it if they want.
Okay, I do have some topics I want to talk about, but you're bringing up mayonnaise and French fries, and I have to tell you a story about French fries.
Oh, go ahead.
So
Go
the
ahead.
who will never be on camera because she just refuses to do that kind of thing. But she, my beloved wife, used to work at an eatery here in our little town of Scottsbluff, Nebraska, and she was taking an order for some people as they were walking through his cafeteria style, and these people walk up and they're like, well, "What would you like to eat?" And there's some French tourists, and they order whatever they have, and they're very about the kind of steak that they want to order. And then they get to us. Okay, what kind of salad would you like? We would like a green salad. Oh, okay. What kind of dressing would you like? We would like blue cheese dressing, but only the large chunks. If it's small chunks, we'll have ranch. And I said, okay, what kind of potatoes would you like? What kind of potatoes do you have? Well, we have fried potatoes and mashed potatoes and hash browns and French fries. American fries? And she's like, yes, we have American fries. And they ordered baked potatoes and went on their way. But now this was before like freedom fries were a thing for like 15 minutes over here. I don't know if you remember that because
what are freedom fries?
But it was really funny that the French tourists took such umbrage to our fries. So I told this story once to some people, and they said to me, "Wait,
Oh, we got Scott.
French fries?
Scott just came in. Hey Scott, how are you?
Hello." So as I was saying, I was once telling the French fry story to a young person, and they were flabbergasted that these people wouldn't take credit for French fries because they're amazing.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised we didn't like. That's a bit of history I'd like to look up now. Is where did the French bit come from? If the French didn't make them,
Belgium, actually, I think.
I guess Belgium. Yeah. What did Belgium fries just not sound good enough?
Well, the Belgians, since their inception as a nation, which has only been about 120 years, because they were formed from a merging of parts of France that didn't want to be French with with the nation of Flanders, which had kind of gone away. And why are you chiming at me? Anyway, and so Belgium kind of doesn't have a long history as a nation, and so they speak well. There's two major language groups, the Flemish and the Walloons, and the Walloons speak either natively French or one of the other Wee languages, and the Flemish speak it's a dialect of Dutch. But
are you sure you're not a teacher like on the side?
I am not. I am not.
Well, I guess you've also you're almost
all
exactly
kinds of information.
You're almost what was it? You're almost exactly 20 years older than me. So like you've gotten all that extra bits of Matthew information that I have to look forward to.
So yeah, that is true. You are the next iteration of the Matt. So just keep on this track, and one day you'll be a fount of useless information as well. So.
Well, I mean, right now I'm thinking about useless information. Apparently, drafts have no voices. And that sounds like
drafts have no voices.
Yeah, apparently, and you figure something so majestic would make some sound, or I don't know.
Yeah,
it does have a good sound. Though. You know what a tapir is? A tapir.
Yes, I do.
Beautiful creature. Just really a bit of God's creativity put into that thing. This weird little pig with with a small elephant trunk, but they chirp like birds. Like that's the noise they make. They make these like chirping noises.
Really? I've never been around one, so I've never been exposed.
I don't know why I got caught up on them. Oh, we were watching. Yeah, okay, I remember. We were watching 2001, or we were watching 2001: Space Odyssey, and at the beginning of the movie, there's all these really weird looking animals, and we're watching it. I was like, "What are those?" And my brother, who was there with me, is like, "Okay, look it up right now. Look up what are those creatures? What are the creatures at the beginning of 2001?" So I looked
Right.
up. There it is, tape here, and then the first image that shows up is it making this face called the Fleming response. Oh, horses do it a lot. It's like when horses do that thing where they stick their teeth out and it looks really
Oh yeah,
goofy,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like that. But like they curl up their snout and they're making that face, but they also have the snout and it looks really funny. And then I just got on this huge tapir kick where like I'd go to bed and the next morning I'd get a message from my girlfriend. She'd say, "Hey, how are you doing? I love you very much." And I wouldn't say anything. And I just send back a picture of a tapir making that face. And she was like, "What is this thing?"
See,
Oh,
my
dude.
wife has to deal with similar things as well. I will just get on research kicks. And I went through about 3 months, this is about a decade ago, reading everything I could on airships. And I studied for some reason, and I couldn't tell you why, but I was very fascinated with airships for 15 minutes, and I learned a lot about them. Did you know that the U.S. Navy used to have an airship corps?
Like, did they had the Navy had an airship corps?
The Navy had an airship corps during the 40s and 50s.
Hmm.
Airships were used in World War One for surveillance, and after I think it was after World War One in the Geneva Accords, it was agreed that they wouldn't target airships because for a while they were airships and balloons were used for bombing and everything else, but it was agreed that they'd be used just for surveillance and they wouldn't be targeted and that kind of thing. And so there was a whole branch of the Navy that was dedicated to airships, a lighter than air aircraft, and for surveillance and research. But it was shelved after 10 years or whatever because they weren't stable enough in rough conditions. That they cost almost nothing to operate, which is the appeal of them. But they were unstable in rough conditions enough that it just wasn't you couldn't overcome that. And there were a number of lost airship wrecks. Um, okay, you know who Clive Cussler is?
No, I do not.
Okay, he's an author. He wrote I can't even think of the series of books. They're about archaeology and their adventure stories. And there's these archaeologists, specifically marine archaeologists, who end up in all of these um, like crazy adventures. Polar Shift was one of his books. Inca Gold, just a bunch of them, and they all follow a series of these marine archaeologists. Well, in the universe of his stories, his characters work for a government agency whose job is uncovering the secrets of the ocean. And it's called the National Oceanographic Research something or other, right? Well, Clive Cussler in real life has a private nonprofit with the same initials, and they are a group of semi-professional and amateur marine archaeologists who go around looking for sunken ships and
Oh,
looking.
that's so cool. He literally brought it to life.
What?
He literally brought it to life,
He
didn't he?
literally brought it. He made enough money off of his books that he's like, I can fund these archaeological exhibitions. So um,
Oh,
so
speaking of which, Scott Bruckner, right in the chat, he says, Clive Cussler, my dad read those books. The one I remember the most is Medusa.
I have not read Medusa, but I've read three or four of them, and I would recommend any of them. They're just real fun.
My Nacho says, I feel pretty smart right now. And I'm really happy that we're educating people. I mean, much
Yes.
more you have
Well,
you've got the unfair advantage of the 20 plus years of being a Matt
that's true. So we have 60 years of Mattness. That's here for the moment.
circulating and all around right now. It's
Although I got to say, Nacho, I got to ask you here. Do you feel smart because you're surrounded with this information that you may or may not find useful, or do you feel smart because we're saying stupid crap?
he's smart by comparison. That's why I think that's the best reason to join us is to make you feel better about yourself.
Yeah, that's. I mean, and anything for the viewers. That's what we're here for. But I also don't like to think that you're mocking me.
I'm
Way,
just
but I don't.
I'm just playing around. Let me think. So I did have like a couple of topics of things that we could discuss on our first episode, and where better to start than the beginning. So I was going to ask you, what was your first comic experience? Like, what kind of got you into the whole thing?
Okay, so probably the viewers who have come on who have not heard this, but I've written about it a couple of times over on our website, idealcomics.net, where we have, I used to have a blog over there of sorts. But I got into comics, strictly speaking, in Sunday Funnies, right? When I was growing up as a kid, Superman was still in the newspapers, Spider-Man was there every week. And one of the things that's actually come up is I mention this to the students because I do teach comics classes every so often in our art center, strangely enough.
That sounds like an awesome job.
Yeah, well, I mostly focus on the writing, but I do talk a little bit about technique. And my one of my business partners, Barry, he's our lead artist, and so he actually does a lot of the art part. I talk mostly narrative flow and that kind of stuff. But when I was a kid, I didn't realize that people didn't come with those black lines around them, the contour lines. And I grew up, I was a little, probably 6 or so before I realized that we don't have contour lines around us. And I was stunned to realize that one day. I was sitting there reading the funnies, and I pick up the paper and I look at my hand, and I'm just like, I'm not a cartoon. Basically was my reaction. Those weren't the words I thought, but I've ingested that from an early age. I bought my first floppies were Uncle Scrooge Adventures and DuckTales comics that
Which
Gladstone
they brought
published.
back now, if you haven't seen for the new DuckTales show, if you haven't seen that, it's actually pretty good now. Granted, I've never watched a whole lot of the original. I imagine someone, you got to live through the excellence that was the 80s. I missed that.
Yes.
I tried to make it, but I didn't. But yeah, it's back and it's actually pretty good. I haven't watched it in a while, but I look forward to seeing it again.
Well, and the DuckTales was based on, and I did not know this as a child, but it was based on the works of in Uncle Scrooge Adventures comics from the 60s by a guy named Carl Barks, who is he invented Uncle Scrooge. He invented the woodchucks, the woodchuck scouts, and that whole setup, and really was a phenomenal and foundational cartoonist, and gave a lot of his use of pacing and epic scope is what makes the DuckTales show even possible. Anyway, so that got me at the, and when I was, up until I was a young man, you could still get comics even in my neck of the woods at grocery stores and at gas stations, right? So I was at the magazine rack buying DuckTales, and right next to it was Batman. And it was not a long jump for me to get into that. My first Batman book I ever bought was the 3rd issue of the World's Finest miniseries that was Dave Gibbons wrote. Dave Gibbons of Watchmen fame.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, he did a 3-issue World's Finest prestige format miniseries, heavy cardstock, glossy paper, all that kind of stuff. And this is back when most comics were newsprint, right? So even the really nice ones were just a shinier newsprint with better ink on them. So, so that was kind of what was going on back there. It was 1989, 1990, right on the border there, and that was a remarkable thing. It just really pulled me in, and then I bought an issue of the Green Hornet Now Comics had out, and I just loved that character so much. And I kept going back to the things to try to find another issue of Green Hornet. And I didn't, but I did find another issue of Batman. And I don't have the number in front of me, but the Batman book specifically that I picked up was the one where Commissioner Gordon has a heart attack at the end of it. And I was just enwrapped by the story. I was hooked. It was a story. It was edited by Denny O'Neil. It was written by Alan Grant and drawn by Norm Brayfogle. And Norman Brayfogle defined the next 2 years of my life with his line work. And I just absorbed everything of that I could. It just reshaped my entire reality. So, but yeah, those are the 5 projects that really kind of got me into comics. And then was the next one was I missed the 5th one was the 2nd issue of the Robin miniseries written by Chuck Dixon that introduced Tim Drake as Robin. He'd been introduced a year and a half before in the comics in a story called Lonely Place of Dying, where they actually introduced him as a character. Now, his first appearance was in Batman Year 3, which was just before that, and both of those stories were written by Marv Wolfman. But Dixon wrote the Robin miniseries after Tim becomes Robin, and he goes across the world to try to learn from the masters of top Bruce, and gets wrapped into this international conspiracy involving evil martial arts dude and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, it's crazy stuff, and I was just hooked. There was no going back.
That's kind of like where your fascination with Tim Drake comes from, because you've talked about a lot where you really love Tim Drake.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Tim is, and it wasn't. I don't think it's just the exposure of him being the first guy I saw, but the fact that they introduced him in a way that made him unique, right? I mentioned this a little bit on Pope Fire's Titans Thursday last week. How Tim was a guy who chose the life because it helped other people, right? He wasn't born into it. He wasn't whatever you want to call it. He wasn't drafted into it. He figured out Batman's secret identity. He sought him out when he saw that he was suffering from Jason Todd's death. And he rose to the challenge to become the offsetting influence that Bruce needed to stay sane and to help people. He believed in the mission so much that he sacrificed his own life and happiness for the sake of somebody else's mission. And I think that's a remarkable thing.
I kind of missed that. There was a lot of nobility, and it felt really natural back in those older comics compared to now. Like, I don't think all modern comics are terrible or anything. There's actually still quite a few that I pick up. I don't go weekly anymore, but I used to go weekly to the comic store. You don't get a lot of that really just wholesome, doing what's right because it's right, or if they are, it feels kind of like unnatural.
Yeah, and I think part of what it comes to is that there's two competing impulses in that, and one is that people want to tell stories that have a certain amount of realism to them, right? And that's what said. If you look back at the Silver Age comics, that's what set aside Silver Age DC from Silver Age Marvel, right? In Silver Age Marvel, there's all the fantastic adventure, but all the human drama is real, right? Pete's got to deal with drama at high school. He's got to deal with his cranky boss. He's got to get medicine for his aunt. That's very real drama, right? The action's overblown. It's Doc Ock. It's the Vulture. It's whatever. It's Mysterio. But the drama is real.
The heart is real. Yeah.
Yeah. Over on the side, we're still telling pretty simple morality plays. And most of the books weren't getting too complex in there. Now, there is complexity that's in a lot of them, in a weird way. It's not as the drama's not as real for most of DC's Silver Age. And that's and like that's why you have situations where you have Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane comics where they're just ridiculous and silly. And what would happen if Superman married both Lois Lane and Lana Lang? Let's write a story about that because that sounds not creepy.
I do like the what ifs. Like there are some really great ones, particularly a lot of the Marvel ones. Have you ever read? It's like what if it was basically Venom Pool? I think that might have even been the name. But not only was it Deadpool mixed with Venom, but he also had a perm. He had like this mess of tangled hair on top of the symbiote suit, and it was because he wanted it and like he could generate it out of his body. I don't know. I like a lot of the Deadpool stuff. I think you said that you're not as big of a fan of Deadpool, but I love that stuff.
I actively dislike Deadpool.
I can respect it. See, like, that's not an opinion I agree with, but I do respect it because I can. My own brother doesn't like Deadpool that much, and I can understand why people don't.
Now, one of the things is, there's only been one Deadpool story I've read that I liked, and it was there was a Hawkeye and Deadpool miniseries, and I picked up 2 issues in a quarter bin some time back, and they were a lot of fun. And it was actually both Hawkeyes, right? It was Clint Barton being a badass, and Kate Bishop also being a badass, but they weren't being competitive. It was a real partner situation. And then Deadpool was like comic relief, but he wasn't like it wasn't the show, right? He also was a badass, so he so it was a real good action crime drama thing going on with comic relief in there. The characters balance each other out. It was a lot of fun, but that was the only story I read Deadpool in that I haven't just been like, oh, this is causing me physical pain.
See, that's what my brother says. He's like, imagine if you cut someone with like a hyperactive SpongeBob and you put him in like a superhero, a Spider-Man costume, and you gave him like Freddy Krueger skin on the inside, and that was Deadpool, and that was his go-to.
That is a thing of beauty. That is. Was that your older or younger brother?
I'm actually the oldest in my family, so they're all younger than me, but he's younger by about 2 years.
I am also the oldest. So
see, it's the whole Matt thing. It's rules of the universe.
So speaking of the Matt thing, I want to tell you the story of my name because it's one of my rehearsed stories, and it's also quite funny. And I think growing up a Matt, you'll appreciate it. So, my mother named me Matthew because she wanted a name that wasn't weird but wasn't common, right? And when she grew up, she knew like 1, maybe 2 Matts was all she met in her entire childhood. So she thought everyone's heard the name. It's in the Bible, but no one uses the name. This is cool. So she decided to name me Matthew. But I was born in 1978. And what my mother didn't know is that in 77, 78, and 79, millions of women across the US and Canada had the exact same idea. Because for 3 years, Matthew was the number 3 name for boys born.
So why can't see and in the comments we have Nacho. See, why aren't more people born Nacho? I mean, Matt definitely is the superior name. I mean, that's why we were going to rule society. But when you're born, Nacho is quite the name to have. I'd say it's like Nacho, you're now second in command.
After
after the Council of Matt.
The Matts.
I'd like to read a couple of comments. So Nacho says Deadpool kills Deadpool. I think it's called. That's my favorite Deadpool book. I've heard about that one. I've actually never read it myself, but it looks funny. And going back to he's talking about the first comic he ever read, and he says it was actually the one where Wolverine gets adamantium put back in his body.
Ooh, yeah. Did you read Macho? Go ahead and answer the comments there, and Matt will tell me because I don't have it up here. But did you ever go back and read the animalistic period when Wolverine's like de-evolving from having the adamantium ripped out so violently? There's a whole like 2 year period where Wolvie looks like a feral monster, and it's some really interesting storytelling in that time. But I'd be interested to hear what you have to think about that if you've read it.
Scott Bruckner writes, if you ask me, I'd try using the yell it out the back door method. If it sounds good, you can name your kid that. I named my child's like Death Eagle, Razor Bird, and then like just put speakers in my window and just like strike a chord. That like there's this like thunderous boom goes through the neighborhood, and then the kid's just like, yeah, that's my dad.
my my sons are Donovan and Taliesin, and this is a little. I know, Matt. This is an interesting thing because you are, of course, 20 years younger than I am. My oldest boy is 17, and he's a high school senior. So it's interesting to do this show when you're just not that much older than he is. But
I know that's what I thought that was really amusing when you had talked about that in the Ideal Comics Jam days ago. You were saying, yeah, I've talked to my kids about it, and I was saying, yeah, this guy that I'm going to stream with, he's like 2 years older than you, and your kid was just like, oh, okay, yeah.
They're pretty nonplussed by stuff because they grew up with me, so they get the full Rhys experience. So I mean, imagine this for 20 years, and then you have what their growing up has been. So
That sounds like fun to me. But let's see. Nachos writes, no, I was too young to read it, and I grabbed random books out of my dad's comic boxes. I'm pretty aware of Feral Wolverine, though.
Yeah, I really loved that period of Wolverine because it one of the things about Wolvie's character, right, is that Wolverine is he's always striving to be the noble warrior, right, and he wants to defeat his animal impulses, but because he wants to defeat his animal impulses, he already is the noble warrior. So one of the things I love about the Wolvie character is that he so strives to be something that he already is. He just has impulse control problems when he gets too angry, which I relate to. But I think that's one of it's an irony of his character, but it also makes him really appealing because he has something to fight against, which is his own sinister side. And with the Feral Wolverine period and the bone claws and everything, it was visually that same fight because Wolvie was the same guy. He was talking in the same way. He was trying to respect people that deserved respect, protect people that needed protected, and kick in the face of those that needed their faces kicked in. And but he also looked like a monster and acted like a person trying to be a gentleman of a redneck. And so that was one of the. I really thought that was a visually appealing for my sake.
Oh, so for some new comments, Scott Bruckner says, "Damn, I'm near the age of this dude's kid," which that makes me happy because that means that I am slightly older than Scott, and I get to wave that over him as like an older brother.
Yes, that's true. Just get the ruler and just start smacking. No, I don't encourage real violence. Just simulated internet.
I do think it's pretty funny though. All right, and the next comment is Nacho saying, "I love that Sabretooth embraces his animalistic instincts, whereas Wolverine fights it." That's a good contrast. I agree. That's really nice.
Yeah. Well, and that's what makes the dynamic work from a mechanical.
Oh, go ahead.
So, Matt,
Yes.
Nachos chimed in. What was your first comic experience?
I got into comic books because Well, I mean, I grew up on a lot of the characters, of course. Like, I loved Ninja Turtles in particular. I know it's a little odd one. You put that next to Spider-Man and the X-Men, which I loved as well. But Ninja Turtles was the one that really stuck with me. But I grew up on that stuff, but I didn't really get into comics themselves until in high school. I had wanted to be a cartoonist, and I still am. I'm just trying to be a cartoonist in more of a web comic sense or comic sense. Um, but I had gotten into animation a little bit. I thought this is really hard. Maybe I should start somewhere else. And I thought of doing comics, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, I'm kind of new to comic books, compared to a lot of the other guys. But I thought, okay, there's a comic store just opened up near me. Maybe I go check that out. And I'd found Scotty Young had made Rocket Raccoon, and I loved that. I don't know if you ever saw that at all. Like, there was a Rocket Raccoon series a couple years ago that came out with the movie essentially, and I loved it. It was just what I wanted from a comic book. I used that as kind of the basis for a lot of the goofy comic stuff that I liked, or the goofy antics that I wanted to write. So it was kind of my own interest in becoming a creator that led me to comic books, and then it built from there. Because then I was like, oh well, I really like Rocket Raccoon. Well, what are the Spider-Man comics like and stuff like that? So then I went over and I started looking at Dan Slott's Spider-Man, which there were parts of it that I still look back and I really liked. And then, this is before I learned about all this drama. And then all new old Marvel came in, and there was no easier way to kind of kill me or kill my interest in comic books. For the longest time, I just used Marvel Unlimited, and I went back to earlier periods or stories that came out recently that I really liked. Um, and that was kind of my introduction. And then I became enthralled with Marvel stuff for a little bit. Then got very disappointed by All New, All Different, gave up for a couple months. Then I found about DC Rebirth and decided I'd try again there. And I noticed there was a huge, I was like, oh, this is just what I wanted from Marvel. And they did pretty well for a while. I think it was just kind of an editorial thing that's kind of hurt them lately. But I became obsessed. Like, I must have spent, I mean, my mom would kill me for saying this, but like $40 like a week. I would go to the comic store and I'd get all the DC stuff, and I'd buy graphic novels. And I filled up a shelf pretty fast with comic books and long boxes, and I just became so obsessed with it because I was loving a lot of Rebirth. And lately, it's kind of died down. Like, a lot of the book quality has kind of dipped, in my opinion. And I became, I just casually pick up. I was like, oh, I like Green Lantern, I like Silencer, and I like Ninja Turtles from IDW, and that's kind of what I'm living on for comics right now.
Silencer.
The Silencer is really great. I know some people weren't too keen on it because they found out Zurcher was working on it, but I haven't been following the drama with Zurcher as much. I don't want to, because most of the time, when I like a comic book, I try my hardest not to look up who made it.
Well, I don't know. I think probably the best thing to look at if anybody cares to look into the whole Zurcher situation, the best voice for that whole ordeal is number one Marmaduke fan. That guy has nailed exactly what the situation is. He's super insightful. I don't know if you've caught any of his stuff or not, but
I see him on Twitter every once in a while.
yeah, he really knows the philosophy of art. He's somebody I'd love to have on a stream sometime because he gets the concepts behind it, and really cool guy about that.
Yeah, but the Silencer, like, I was still loving it. I haven't I've collected up quite a few issues lately. Like, I've been so caught up with school and getting back to playing League of Legends and working on my own stuff that I've fallen behind in going to the store. I mean, I still go, I still pick up my stuff. I just haven't read as much.
Yeah. That can be a dangerous habit, and you end up with giant stacks of comics sitting around not being read.
I know. I'm just like, I was blown away, flabbergasted when you were sharing on Twitter like your image of your collection, and it's just file cabinets as far as the eye can see. Like, you essentially have a comic room, it seems.
Yeah, that's not all of them.
Where are the others?
I have two milk crates that are upstairs of comics that I'm reading through. Plus, I've got a shelf display of stuff too. And
Oh,
yeah,
my brother hates this. I'm sorry
I
for
probably
interrupting really quick.
have I probably have like 1,700 pounds of comics.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know the exact weight or anything, but it's definitely tonnage.
I'll tell you, it's funny that you say you have a milk crate next to right next to your bed because
Yep.
I have that's kind of what I have. I have a wicker basket next to my bed full of books that I'm reading, and it's full of both trade paperbacks as well as floppies themselves. And it's just like, oh man, I really liked this, so I'm gonna put this here. And for the while, I didn't have the basket. That was actually something my brother had gotten me. We share a room, and right next to my bed, which is on the or like closer to the floor, his is like a bunk above me. He's tired of stepping over comic books and trying to look out for them when he's going to bed.
That's hilarious.
Well, yeah, the thing that's kind of interesting that again, that's kind of something you and I both. Oh, I kind of like what you're doing there with the butterfly or the fairy wings.
Yes. So this is the fairy wings there. This is Titania, right? She is sort of our answer to a modern age Wonder Woman. Um, Semi-retired. She's now a teacher at the Hero School where our protagonists attend. This is for our webcomic Force of Good and Evil, in case anyone cares. Um, and so she's named after the Queen of the Fairies from Shakespeare's much. Oh my goodness, I was going to say Much About Nothing, but that's the wrong one. Um,
Midsummer's Night's Dream.
Midsummer Night's Dream. Thank you. My goodness.
Yeah, there you
go. Oh, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed, Matt.
No, don't worry about it. Everyone forgets things, you know.
Everybody forgets their Shakespeare. That's not true. I'm just a failure. Anyway, but yeah, so this is Titania, and this is her daughter, Jagged Princess, back here. Um, and they're both characters inside of our universe. Jagged Princess is a student at the supervillain school across town, and Jagged Princess is, Titania is an instructor and guidance counselor at Hero School. Jack Cole Hero Academy, I think is what we called it. And so in the storyline, what I'm doing here, these are several of the hero students are gathered together at a Ren fair for an extracurricular activity. And unbeknownst to Jagged Princess's mom, her prize student Chad in the red here, and Jagged Princess are secretly dating. So, da da da. All about the drama.
That stuff can be fun to write, like putting your characters in those situations. But the thing that always kills me about it when I'm trying to write the romantic situations between characters, and granted, I don't have anything to show right now or anything I'm ready to show, but is not making it seem like really tacky because, like, you know, sometimes comic book romances, um, they're either like they're not very interesting or they're like over dramatic in like an uncomfortable way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Well,
know. I kind of felt like that reading some of the recent comics, or recent stuff. Like there'd be things where like Blue Beetle's girlfriend was like really awkwardly written, and I mean, granted, I think I talked about this on Twitter. You might have seen it, you might have not. The Blue Beetle Rebirth series was a mix of some really cool ideas and like some bad execution and some really good execution here and there. It was a kind of it was a big mess all around. I mean, I still have every issue, and like the one cover I had shared on Twitter is one of my favorite comic book covers I've ever seen. Like you might, or again, you might have seen that. If not, it was a really really sick image of Blue Beetle with his blade arm. Oh, you know what I just realized is in the chat, Scott had said something and then retracted it. Um, it's been classified. The government's shutting down on him. But yeah, but there was a teenage romance between Blue Beetle and this one girl, and it just seemed like really awkward. Like the person writing it like didn't really fully understand um teenage romances.
Right.
I think it was Christopher Sabela, and I remember somebody said don't look him up, so I haven't.
One of the things difficult about teenage romances is that the ones that last are the ones that are slow, right? But nobody wants to write romances that take forever because they get kind of boring. So they put all of this um, emotional pathos. They front load the stories with it, right? And that ends up, in my humble opinion, it ends up sabotaging the characters, right? And because you either feel like you're getting written into a corner, or you're sacrificing, the future of the characters for something else. And that's one of the challenges with that. Like, I don't know if you ever read Jeff Johns' Titans run, um, when he was writing the Teen Titans, and they
It's
had
been on my watch list forever. I love Jeff Johns; he's one of my favorite writers. But yeah, his I think that was one of his first gigs too, wasn't it?
he did the Flash before that. I mean, and like Jeff came from he came to uh, comics from TV and stuff. So he was an established writer before. He didn't break into comics; he was recruited, um, which is fine. I'm not trying to bag on that or nothing. Um, but yeah, he had a whole career ahead of time. But so, which is why they put him in charge of DC, and moved him over to the TV side of it, production side of it.
Well, it's varying degrees of success from an outsider's perspective. Yeah,
Yeah,
looking into Titans, I don't want to touch that. Um, but I've heard mixed things about it. Like some people say it's as bad as it looks, and some people are saying it's actually a lot better than it looks.
well, and I think mixed is probably the best description of it from everything I've heard.
But yeah,
Um,
getting back to Jeff Johns' Titans with romance.
yeah, he took over from where he left. He took the characters from where Peter David had left them in Young Justice, and there had been these little hints of a romance between Cassie, Wonder Girl, and Connor Kent, Superboy. And John's uh, put like everything in that, right? And they really kind of doubled down on that aspect of the stories. And I think it actually works really good because as you saw them develop under Peter David, they were a good match. But what made it really awkward was when they decided to kill off Superboy, which I still think was a stupid move. When they decided to kill off Superboy, what they ended up with is they had all this undealt with baggage, and it made interactions between Wonder Girl and the rest of the team really awkward, to the point where there's this weird conflict between her and him over stuff that was just I don't know. I didn't care for it. That's about the time I quit buying Titans.
There's just some things like that where it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back, where you're kind of, am I going to leave this? Am I not? And then there's something that happens like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, for me, it takes kind of a lot for the most part. Um, if there's something that, because I really dig on stories, so even if it's not perfect, I'll there's a lot of times I'll follow something just to see where the story goes. But sometimes it's like, nah, that's good, we're cool.
Oh man, I miss, like I said, I miss going to my local comic store all the time and just buying everything DC. Like if DC and Marvel could get their stuff together, I would be in a box on the street at this point with a lot of other boxes full of comics, mind you. But I'd like sell everything.
Well, you can bag and board, make good water protection for you.
Oh yeah, like I'd have like a little. If I ever lived on the street and I just had all these comics, like I'd build like a little house out of boxes or something. I got comics. I'll be good. Um, but yeah, I really missed that, and that's one of the things is if a lot of stuff changed with mainstream comics, I'd be right back there to
Yeah.
buy everything.
I think some of the elements of that come to the fact that, like, and I've talked about this um, in different places, but one of the difficulties that comics in all media have is that, especially the not I should say all media, but the serialized media, and comics, television are one of those. In order to keep it engaging, you have to have an illusion of change, right? You've got to maintain the feeling that things are happening, but it can't be too drastic, or you scare away the readers. And but I think that at the same time, I think there are a lot of writers who have forgotten that it's an illusion, and so they'll do things to a character, and then other people will have to deal with it, as it goes. And I think that's a pretty big problem, because a lot of people will write characters in such a way that just wrecks them for the future. And I don't know. I think it could be a real hazard that creative people have to deal with. But a lot of times it comes down to the editorial to say, no, we're not going to do that.
All right, Scott Bruckner says if DC and Marvel got their act together, I would look Matt McJerkface, I'd look like Squidward from this one episode of SpongeBob where he's out on the street and he's in like a little box like spare change, spare change. I don't know if you have you ever seen SpongeBob? I think I'm not hearing anything. What happened? Everything's going quiet. All right, can you guys still hear me? Oh,
Oh,
what
I'm back.
what happened?
Are there two of me?
Yeah, it does say there's a Matthew and then there's you on top of it. And I'm not just talking about me.
Yeah. Well, that's weird. I'm not sure what to
Older,
do.
yep. They said they noticed there was an older Matt disappeared.
I have returned, sort
All
of.
right. But yeah, it's SpongeBob. Like there's this one episode, Squidward decides that he's done working at the Krusty Krab, and that it's holding him back from being what he really wants. Like he could be a football player, or a king, or like or an astronaut. And he leaves, and like a week later, he's like in a box on the street. So, like that's what we're talking about here. Let me think.
SpongeBob. I'm gonna say this out here. SpongeBob was a revelation, especially in the first two seasons, because
I'd argue three, but yeah.
it was what it really was about. It was a study of the transition from childhood to adulthood. Um, and that was what it was about. Was about the trials and tribulations, and how you still think like a kid even though you're not, because what's a kid? And learning that responsibility can be a joy, and all that kind of stuff. It's great.
To me, my favorite thing about SpongeBob will always be like the jokes. Looking back on it, like there's so many things that I love, like the French, even just the small things like the French narrator, or you know,
Parents of
really
Jacques Cousteau.
or the really silly situations like SpongeBob saying we can pretend to be plants. He throws himself on the ground. He's like photosynthesis, photosynthesis. Nacho says the Dirty Dan episode is the best episode, and that's a pretty great one too, where Sandy goes into hibernation and they go and they're stuck in the tree dome with her, and they're playing in the snow because it's wintertime, and they're having like a cowboy face off.
Yeah.
The three-headed copter spatula. Yeah, from the first episode, Scott brings up that bit. There was a funny video earlier, because Smash Bros comes out in the morning, which means I have to get my butt out of bed, and go to the store, while I have 2 days off from school because of. Oh man, I guess that's a lot. There's a lot to unpack there, but there was a video where they were explaining the wait for Smash Brothers and how it's going to be like on the GameStop employees by reusing that scene from SpongeBob where like all the anchovies come in from the buses and they flood the restaurant and they're all rambunctious and they're throwing people around. They're throwing Squidward and Mr. Krabs in that little boat that they have at the cashier, and they're chucking them around. And they're all sitting there. It's like all these Nintendo fans basically waiting for Smash.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. Like this stream, which I was also looking forward to all day, is like the only thing keeping my mind off of breaking down for Smash Brothers.
My youngest boy Taliesin is a huge Smash fan. So
You ever play with him?
I do sometimes, but I suck, so I don't play very often.
That's what my dad says. Like to me, and I go like, no, you gotta play against you because that's like the fun is learning and getting better. He's like, no, it's no use.
Yeah. For my money, the only game is Fallout. So
Yeah, I know you're talking about that on one of the streams that I showed up for in the chat.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I freaking love that game. Fallout. I've got 4 and Vegas and 3 and Tactics, and I love all of them differently.
my friend was obsessed with the mobile phone game for the longest
Oh
time, like
yeah,
the
I
Fallout
actually
Shelter.
I actually got that for my Xbox, as it's available on Xbox now, but I haven't played it there yet.
Yeah, I remember something he would always bring up that he thought was so funny is that he had one guy and 9 women, and you just noticed there were a lot of pregnant women marching around the shelter, and the guy's happiness was like through the roof.
Yep,
Um,
that's survival.
it's survival. And then it's like, yeah, it might be the apocalypse, but this guy's living it up. This guy's like, this guy's pretty happy about his situation. Skyrim and Prototype are up there for me. Prototype was a have you ever seen Prototype, Matt?
Oh, I said what?
Prototype, a video game.
No.
Oh man, that's imagine like symbiote powers. Like it's pretty crazy. My friend loved another friend of mine, different one, loved it. Um, if I remember correctly, it's pretty violent, but like he basically had these like venom like powers. Like you turn your arm into a blade. It was pretty cool looking. I'm kind of now that we're talking about it, I'm kind of curious to see like what all those games were like. Um, but yeah, for me, a lot of the games that I tend to like to play, I play a lot of fighting games. Um, like you remember Street Fighter?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love games. I love games like that. Like the latest Street Fighter hasn't cut it for me as well, but older Street Fighter games, I love those. Not as big on Mortal Kombat, but I like the like. See, with Mortal Kombat, it's like I like the characters, and the game itself is fun to play, but I'm not a fan of the gore. Like it just doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah, I'm not really familiar with Mortal Kombat much, so
You know the gist of it. It's just
I know,
basically a very, very
know
violent.
it existed when I was, it came out when I was young. So I mean, I'm familiar with it from that context, but it's still not something that I really know much about.
Oh, Scott is describing. He said, "Imagine Eddie Brock being Venom and not having to rely on a host, and that's basically Prototype."
All right, I'll allow it.
Oh, all right. Now that I'm kind of curious now. Like now, I kind of want to look back on that. What do you think? Some other favorite video games of mine. Um, I love Gears of War. If you've ever heard of that.
I back here in Bluffs, when that first came out, there was a whole crew of young people that was like their world for like 6 months. So I heard a lot about Gears of War. I've never played it, but I have heard a lot about it.
I like when I was younger, I heard about it and I was like, that sounds disgusting. And then a couple years passed, and my friend wanted to play it because somehow, some way, a copy had shown up on our Xbox of Gears of War 3. And so then we went and we played the survival mode, and I loved it. And so then I was like, oh, well, what's the story of this game? Well, it turns out if I'm 3 games in, that means I better kind of look back at the other games and figure out what happened or what's going on. So I did, and I had a lot of fun. I liked the story for his, it's a very meathead game, but it's not trying to hide that. But the plot itself, there's like it's surprisingly pretty good, and I love the story and the universe that they built themselves. Um, and I'm looking forward to the next game comes out. I think it's next year.
So you ever played this is one I haven't played, but I should. Titanfall?
Oh, very fun. My brother, my like the younger one, or the just a little bit younger one. Yeah, he loves Titanfall, and I played it a little bit. Um, my favorite one to be, I think, was I chose the mech with the minigun and the shield, and that was my favorite to use. But that is a fun twist on first person shooters.
Now, the reason I should have played it is because my good buddy Joel is actually on the dev team.
Oh my goodness, really?
He's a programmer for him, and he's smartest guy I've ever met. My wife says that the reason we still have world hunger and cancer is because Joel makes video games, which
Oh, not
probably
just
some
talking about
truth to
Marvel
that
Ultimate
statement.
Alliance. Apparently, they've announced it. Do you remember our Marvel Ultimate Alliance?
Yeah.
Yeah, he said that they announced a third one. I didn't know that. That's actually kind of cool. That's another series like that's on the back of my list. Similarly, I've also met a game developer. Have you heard of Firaxis? They made Civilization and
Yeah.
what was the other XCOM particularly. Like he was one of the programmers on XCOM 1 and 2. And I'm nearly positive he still works there, but I haven't like really kept up with him. He's really more my friend's friend. But he came over
Right.
for dinner at his house one time, and he was telling me all this stuff, and I was like, "Whoa, this is so cool!" Because it's like, growing up, video games were everything to me, and they still are. Like, I love video games now. It's kind of branched out to comics as well and cartoons. Um, and um, with this guy, he was just talking about this, and oh yeah, we did this and this, and we named this character after this guy, or after my friend's sister, and I thought like it blew my mind. And then he was showing me that like the connections when you make in the game industry. Like he was showing me his League of Legends account because I played that back then. Like I just got back into it now, but years ago, he showed me. Oh, they give you all this like free stuff, and they send you messages like, "Hey, you made a great game. Here's a gift from us to you." And I must have been like 14, and it like blew my mind.
Yeah. It's a pretty small world, I guess.
Yeah, I got although I do believe Firaxis is based in Baltimore or something. I know that Bethesda is based in Bethesda, Maryland, but the Firaxis team, I'm pretty sure it's Baltimore, but I could be 100% wrong. Scott says the first real gaming experience I had was Destiny and all the DLC. The only bad part was I moved to a location where not many players live, so I had to do a lot of things alone. And I kind of know that. I've played Borderlands, which is imagine Fallout but raunchier.
Right.
Um, I love
Actually,
Borderlands. Like I
really
don't know if
good
you've ever seen the
Borderlands,
graphic style for that
but
game, where it
no,
looks like a
something
comic
about
book.
it just doesn't quite click with me the same way Fallout does. But
Well, Fallout takes itself much more seriously. Is the other thing is, and then Borderlands is definitely a lot more immature, which I describe in a similar vein to Deadpool. Um, but which is maybe that's also why it's like I think the aesthetic of Borderlands is one of the things that pulls me in the most is how everything looks and sounds. Like it looks like a moving comic book, and but also it's got that very immature sense to it. Um, let's see, and then so yeah, Scott, if Destiny One is his first was his first gaming experience, then he's relatively new to gaming, which is really an alien concept to me because I've been playing video games as long as I can remember. In fact, I can remember some of my first memories of when they say like you really only remember when you're like 3 years old and onward. Um, some of my first memories being that young is like having Mario Land on the Game Boy. Funny enough, like the Game Boy Advance was out and my sister had one, but I had a Game Boy Color and I had a game that had come out in 1989 and that's what I was playing all the time. Um, but it's kind of surprising that Destiny was like his first experience. That's another gameplay that's like Borderlands. I don't know if you've ever played Destiny.
I haven't. I've got a bunch of buddies that here in town that are super into it, and they stream it on Twitch and all kinds of stuff. But I don't. That's not that ain't me. So that's cool though.
Yeah, so let's see. And then Nacho says, I loved the first Destiny. The first game I played was Tekken 3, which that's Tekken is something I'm going to have to be embarrassed to say as a fighting game aficionado. I haven't touched Tekken yet, and I feel kind of sorry for it because I see that one of the characters is a bear, like a grizzly bear. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of sad to say that I haven't bought every game and played that character in every single game that she's in. He, she, or it is. Oh, Scott says my parents are genuine article boomers, though I did have a DS before that point. Um,
But
so I
okay,
guess what he
hang
means
on,
is
hang on,
talk
hang
about.
on. Scott, right? You're like near my kid's age, eh? You're like 16, 17, something like that. And your parents are boomers, which born before 69. So they're ancient.
It's kind of one of the things I've learned recently, especially from the last stream. I don't know if you caught up on that with Donald when he had me on there with Scott. Apparently, boomer is a term that just young people that a group that I am certainly not a part of. Um, they used to refer to old people. Um, and I just think that, or I think that's just kind of funny that it's like a boomer, which is supposed to be like, baby boomer is like this blanket term. That was a very fun stream. It was 4 hours long, but it was a lot of fun to hang out with Donald and Scott and
So Scott,
sketch
Scott,
therapy.
let me come here. Bring the camera in here, Scott. All of its glory. This is a face of a young Gen Xer. Okay, I'm a young, like right on the edge of being too young to be Gen X, right? From the summer of love till the death of disco. That's my generation, and I was born just before disco died. Okay, so like if your parents don't look much older than this, they're not boomers. Okay. They don't have to,
He also writes that my parents were both born before 1960, so
whoa, they really are. I apologize.
I
Wow.
guess genuine article. He really meant it.
You really meant you and way to go. Way to go, Scott's parents, for keeping at it. That's respectable.
And then he says also I have no siblings. I think he meant siblings, but I'm not going to let him live that typo down.
No siblings.
No siblings. I'll be your
How does
sibling,
he
Scott. We'll
speak?
be best buddies. It's no sibling. All right, now I got to him. He's retyping it in the chat. Barry's here. He says, "Not sure how anyone could look much older than that." Oh, he's getting you. He's getting you, Matt.
He always does, man.
All right, that's awesome. Barry's here, so Was the audio cutting out again, or you just
Oh,
going
no, I
quiet?
just had nothing to say.
All right.
Oh, well, I think we're ready for words on this page. That's what I think.
I mean, this looks like there's something almost familiar about this, even though I've never gone through the whole process of making a comic, but it feels natural. Like it's like the feeling of knowing you've kind of found your place.
Yeah.
Barry says, "Yeah, Destiny is good stuff. I miss Tekken." He did spell it incorrectly, but yeah, I'm not going to get on everybody about spelling. I don't have time for that.
Yeah. There's too much going on in the world to get everything spelled right.
My mom used to rage at me when I beat her in Sonic Adventure 2. The funny thing is, when I was playing the Sonic games that came out around that time, I started with Sonic Heroes, which came out after Sonic Adventure 2. But I do know because every other kid had it that was just the slightest bit older than me. So I guess I can kind of relate to that. I hope I didn't scare Scott away. Like I was just, like I said, I'll be his older sibling. I was just playing around. Please don't go tell mom.
Well, I don't know. You could probably tell your mom, and she might not hear it, being as old as she is. No,
I think what's interesting is you live in the mountain time range, and
that's
I live on the East Coast, and then Scott lives, I believe, in Central. Okay, yeah, he's still there. He hasn't told mom yet. We're okay.
okay. We're safe. We're safe. Excellent.
You ever see those memes that kind of take you back to your childhood, where it's like the face you make when you're playing with your brother and your brother starts crying and you're like hoping to God he doesn't go tell mom.
I thought you were going to talk about some pop culture reference, taking it back to childhood, and I was about saying, being like, you realize the things that bring you back to childhood bring me to my 20s, right? Yes.
Yeah, I think that's kind of funny. I don't know, time is just kind of funny like that.
It
But
is.
yeah, living in Michigan.
Well, Michigan, that's interesting enough. Is he in Central or is he in Eastern? Because it's right around there. It changes.
Let's see, we'll have to wait. I think there's like a 30-second delay. He'll
Yeah, it's about
be
30 seconds away.
no,
But
just play like some like Jeopardy music or something.
yeah, well, one of the things about Michigan though is the story that I'm working on right here takes place in the UP, in a fictional location in the UP. So there
All
you
right, he says Eastern time zone. Um, yeah, I forget. You might have missed this earlier when I was describing. I think it might have been Scott asking what time we were going live. I think it actually was Scott, and I had said it is 9 p.m. for East Coast. It is 8 p.m. for Central, 7 p.m. for Mountain People time, and um,
mountain people time. You know, just your hillbillies and
the warm, balmy state of Michigan. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Scott is going through like another. Scott and Nasser. Nasser gets is already been hit with some pretty bad snow.
yeah. Well, Nasser's in Chicago, right? So they get what
Yeah,
they
he's
take effect.
but they're both up there in the northern part of the country.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and like Chicago is actually like directly west of us here, so they're not further north. But because they're right off the lake of the lake, their air is like 100% humidity all the time. So the winds are much colder, and they get way more snow than we do. So we actually, where I'm at, don't get that much snow, but we do get cold, but it's usually a pretty dry cold.
And snow or cold without the snow. Ugh.
Yeah, you got to be a special kind of person to be a Nebraskan. You got to have a certain toughness about you. So I'm willing to accept that for the sake of the weather.
If you take your right hand and look at the bottom of the crack between your index and ring fingers, that's where the area I live. I'm guessing he's talking about the time
Yeah,
zone.
he's 100% Michigander.
See, it's better than us. We're called Baltimoreans.
Fair enough. But no, but the hand thing, because Michigan is shaped like that. Every Michigander who doesn't live in the UP, and lots that do, their hand is their map. They know every county. It's just it's uncanny. That's just such a device. Every Michigander does that.
Huh, like okay. I'm learning so much in the live stream.
Well,
Nacho
that's
says, I wish it was warm here. It's 3 a.m. and it's been raining for hours. Yeah, that's when it comes to time zones, I think Nacho has us all beat. He's from or like I said earlier, he's from the UK.
oh yeah.
Geez, raining at 3 a.m. I hope that there is like a sleeping Mrs. Nacho in the other room or anybody that we're keeping up.
So Nacho, do you burn the midnight oil because you're just one of those people who doesn't find rest until they're utterly exhausted, or you just make bad life choices?
We figured, let's see. Scott then says, if you take your left hand and make it look like a finger gun, you can get a map of the UK, I believe. Yeah, UK. I always felt like the UK kind of looked like a little weird looking guy wearing a hat. Let me just look. So I'm pulling this up on a map. Like a funny little man. um, I don't know if anyone else sees it. I like to try and make weird shapes out of, or mentally, weird shapes out of the um, shapes of countries. Upper Pen or UP Upper Peninsula.
Yep, Upper Peninsula.
He says, we don't live together. I've got earphones in. Being at university has taught me to stay up to do work.
I am a night owl by I don't know if it's by birth or what it is, but I oftentimes am just groggy all day long until about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night, and then I will just be awake until 3 or 4 in the morning. And I used to work a job where I went in at noon and got off at like 10, and it was a really good fit for me, but that job didn't last forever, and I do not adjust well to daylight hours, which
I'm
drives.
kind of the opposite. When I worked at a pizza place for the past year, I almost got like back to back closing shifts like every night. And it'd be like from 5 to like 12 to 2, kind of.
Mhm.
Um, and it killed me because I'm such a daylight person.
When I worked back in the my well, when I was your age, Matt, I worked nights at Walmart for a spell, and that was hard for me because it was the dead of winter and I never saw the sun. When I'd get off at 7 in the morning, it was just sunrise, 6 or 7 in the morning, and then I'd go home and I'd sleep until 4 in the afternoon, and it's already sunset, and that was hard for me. Um, was never actually seeing the sun. That was a tough one. But I also, if I have my druthers, I wouldn't get up until like 10, and that's just I have a really hard time functioning before 10, especially before 10.
See, that's the weird thing about sleep is sometimes you're up on 3 hours or like oversleeping makes you tired, undersleeping makes you tired. And sometimes like just missing 8 hours by like just 1 or 2 hours can really get to you. And then sometimes you don't sleep at all, or like you sleep for like 3 hours and you're ready to go.
I find if I get a 5 hours of sleep, it pretty much sets me well, and I can function pretty well on 4. But usually with that, I usually have one day a week I try to sleep in, and where I'll get more sleep than that. I'd like sleep in on Saturdays and on Friday nights or whatever. But,
You know what Nacho was telling me to do earlier was to go to Taco Bell and get their fries. I don't know how long they've been doing fries, but apparently they're pretty cheap. Go to Taco Bell, you get fries, and then to dip them in chocolate.
no.
And I might try that. I'm kind of intrigued now, and like maybe I'll post the videos where I was like, "This is for you," and like if I'm disgusted or if my guy's pretty good.
There you go.
Goes up to Nacho. I want to thank him for being there. He supported me since day one, and it's really meant a lot to me. Look how far I've come. I'm now eating Taco Bell fries and ketchup, or not ketchup, chocolate.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I don't know. Oh, Taco Bell actually makes a pretty good Supreme Crunch Wrap. That's the thing to get if you go to Taco Bell.
I would agree. That is really good.
Oh my gosh. What do Americans think English people sound like? I'm curious. Do the fries dip? Um, so is he say English people sound like? Well, are we supposed to do accents?
It depends on what part of England you're from, right? Because you've got your West Counties accent, which I'm not going to try right now because I would just get it wrong. But that's very different from the posh Londoners. And then you've got those folks up in the north that almost sound Scottish but don't. I don't know. It depends what part of England you're from, yeah.
Okay, apparently I did a Cockney
The
accent.
Cockneys, and that's a whole different thing too.
I'll learn them all. I'll catch all the English accents. They're like Pokemon.
There you go.
Get them one by one,
Have
and
the
then
accents.
have it in like a notebook.
But I've kind of given up on them. I don't know. I just something about it is like if you do it wrong, it just seems like it's insulting. So maybe just don't do it. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
like I've always like the thing about that is I love to do voices. Like I love to impersonate Robin Williams, CeeLo Green, like any. I love to just impersonate people. And then when I got them at school, and like it's like, oh, please welcome this person. They're from the UK, and like in my mind, I'm just thinking, I was like, oh wow, all the time I kind of feel like an asshole for every single time that I've ever done a fake English accent. Or it's not that I like feel a ton of remorse, but rather that I'm sitting there, I'm like, this thing is like, oh yeah, that was something I did. He has a Manx accent, he says.
a Manx
I'm guessing.
from the Isle of Man, home of the world's most famous motorcycle race, man.
Ooh,
Yeah,
he sounds
so
like
one of
he's.
the six Celtic nations. They were. It's the home of the longest standing parliament in Europe, the Tinwald, which was founded by Vikings in the like 1100s.
Wait, does this mean that Nacho is a Viking born?
Oh, partially, yeah. The
Oh, he
Manx.
says okay, he says Manchester. He's from Manchester.
Oh, from Manchester. Okay, that's different.
So sadly,
You
he's not a Viking, is he?
don't. Well, they might still be. The Vikings where they got in all over the place there, but
Oh, Scott says to go to Wendy's, get a large fry and a frosty, and dip the fries in the frosty. Trust me, I've actually heard of a lot of people who do this.
yeah, that's a pretty standard thing. But
I've seen a lot with Chick-fil-A in particular.
while we're talking about weird things to do with food, I'm going to tell you a little Nebraskan trick, and you're going to hear it, and it's going to sound gross, but it is amazing. Okay, it's a very Nebraskan thing. Get yourself a bowl of chili and a cinnamon roll, right? And that
Dip it?
that is your implement for eating that chili. You unroll it a little bit at a time, and spoon it out, and eat that cinnamon roll down with the chili. It's remarkably good.
All right. That sounds kind of interesting. It's something that we've always done. I think this is just the McGibson thing, but or McJerkfaces. The is putting ketchup on macaroni and cheese. Apparently, a lot of people frown on that.
That's like I hear a big thing in Canada.
Oh God, I've probably got maple syrup in my blood somewhere.
Oh, it's quite possible.
I went to Canada once. I actually loved it. But then again, it wasn't that different because I was right on the border. We went to Niagara Falls.
Mm.
Um, but that was a really cool experience.
My mother's family are Ingles, and they had come originally from New York State, and then went straight west into Canada, into Ontario, and then through there across into Michigan, and then westward through Wisconsin, and I ended up in South Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So that's how they got to this part of the country. Well, not quite this far out, but they originally had. So my Ingles family actually came through Canada. So I can't frown on them too much. They spent the generation up there, so it's in my background too.
I don't have anything like whenever I make like jokes about maple syrup and stuff like that. I have no like hate in my heart or anything. I'm just messing around. But so here we have Scott asks, are we talking about baked mac and cheese? Now, if I'm gonna guess, is that like where it's baked into a ball, kind of like what they do at Cheesecake Factory? That's pretty good. You'd
Hmm.
have to elaborate a little bit on that. Nacho says he's never had mac and cheese. It's kind of surprising.
Well, he is from a land with no hope, so I suppose that's okay.
One of my teachers who was Irish. He was talking like directly from Ireland, like first generation American.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, he was telling me that the UK is kind of the scariest thing ever. If you think about it, it's like this little island conquered almost the entire planet at one point, and they've given it back over time. But
Hmm.
you know, I guess that kind of says something about it doesn't take like a you don't it's the little country that could.
Well, one of the things that Britain had going for it along its trip is that it kept like defeating these other nations that kind of had it better off. You know, uh, I was just talking today about Spain and how they had put all this money into exploration and they were still a force to be reckoned with, but they attacked you know England, Queen Elizabeth's England back in the 1600 early well 1500s, and they ran abreast against these bad storms, crashed off the north coast of Ireland, and never regained their strength militarily again. They spent the next 200 years picking fights with people, trying to get enough resources to become a world empire in a real way, and all they did was just spend all their money. It's really remarkable to think about. But England was the beneficiary of Spain's fall, of France's fall, of Portugal's bad foreign policy. That led them to that place. So it's really interesting to look at on the world stage.
All right, so uh, yeah, Nacho says we were polite and we gave the countries back. Like that's I feel like that's a good joke right there. Is someone's like you conquered the planet, we gave it back. Um, and then Scott says baked mac and cheese. He says, no, it's baked in a pan like lasagna where you layer the shell noodles and different types of cheeses and bake it in the oven. But you put ketchup on Kraft mac and cheese? My mom eats hers with applesauce. Like, does she eat applesauce on the mac and cheese? Because I don't know if I'd go that far, but yes, that's what we did. And I still do honestly. Like, if there's ketchup nearby, I still revert. There's this thing in psychology we call oh, I forget the exact term for it right now. Regression, where you go back to older stages. Yeah, that's me. I'm going back to my childhood and I'm having ketchup on my macaroni. Yes, he says yes on the mac and cheese. That's not something I think I'd ever try. And oh, Carl's here! Hooray! Carl's amateur hour from Twitter. He's a really, I think he's a very talented cartoonist. He's
Oh
Very,
man, Carl, thanks for stopping by, man. I've seen this guy's stuff. It's really good.
it's really good. It's like it reminds me so much of those older, like he's shared a lot of stuff about Popeye and stuff like that. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I'm
I
in
love
Oklahoma.
Carl.
He's
He
got
does some
stuff
great
by the
stuff. He's very
matriarchy,
friendly.
the matriarchy. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Say,
see, we're pulling in all these people. Like I think it's my charisma. Look, we got 6 watchers right now.
well, you are doing the lion's share of the talking in this section. So,
Yeah, that was one thing. I tend to talk a lot, and then when I was on the stream with Donald, it became the Matt and Sketch show because me and Sketch talked a whole lot, and then occasionally Scott would chime in and say something. Charisma 100, baby.
it's the gift of gab. That's what it
Get
is.
the gab. I kissed the Blarney Stone.
That's absolutely true.
I want to go to Ireland someday. Like, I mean, right now it's not really something I can do, but I would love to go someday. Let's see. I had to make gringo tacos that night. Um, Gringo tacos. Mm.
What is a gringo taco?
Oh, that was what one of the things we were talking about is my brother's friend. Her family is her family's from Mexico,
All right.
and she calls a lot of American made um Mexican food. She calls it gringo. So she calls it like gringo tacos, gringo salsa, and she says it all jokingly because she was born here like the rest of us, just that her family has strong like Mexican roots.
All right.
But she jokingly says that. She's very sweet though. Let's see, a large part of my family are from Ireland. I'd love to visit there too. See, it's just a big old Irish hullabaloo in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gringo Mexicano. Emma.
My in our little burg here on the high plains, about a third of our population is Mexican descended or immigrants. Uh,
Oh,
so there's a lot of Mexican Americans and just I don't want to say just off the boat, but people that have emigrated in their lifetime. So
that's real interesting.
and the town was of course founded by Russo Germans. There's lots of those around here too. I am not one of those people. I imported much later, but
My entire family is basically sounds like Nacho because like almost my entire lineage can be like traced back to just being from the UK, and then like one person from Germany.
yeah.
So yeah, wait, like I swear, if I like spit in a tube or something and find out that I'm related to nachos, or that'd be kind of funny.
Well, the in Britain, they're pretty much everybody who's like been there. Their generations have been there longer than, or within the last, or longer than about 150 years ago, are pretty much related in one way or another. That's not entirely true, but there's a lot of close lineage. In fact, the most Welsh families who are whose family can trace back to the early 1800s at least, actually go back to the 9 noble houses of the Middle Ages, because they're just the wealthiest are the ones who survived, but there also was a lot of marriage between the classes back in the Middle Ages. So it kind of it's just an interesting little tidbit there, but you know, bloodlines tend to survive.
You're becoming like you are an additional professor for me right now. Like you're my European history professor is what you're becoming.
Well, I
Let's
have
see.
had quite a bit, so
Scott says most of my family's Polish. Hell, my family trucks 3 hours up to the tip of the pinky to sit down for polka music.
there are a lot of Poles in Michigan, that's for sure.
You know what I was upset by? So there's this place called Dearborn, Michigan, but there's no deer people. Like Wendigos. Like I was really hoping that that's where they were all hiding out was in Dearborn, Michigan, but
Nope,
nope. Turns out
those
very different.
guys in Dearborn.
Let's see. Yeah, I think it's kind of funny. Like Carl comes in and we both start like gushing about Carl. But yeah, his stuff is really good. Like I think like I don't know, did you just launch it, Carl, or you do have a webcomic out right now? Let's see what he says. Like I know there's a bit of a delay between the chat and the Matthew.
Yes, yes, there are indeed.
Oh, he feels flattered. Oh, see there we make people blush. Nacho says I have family that have lived in Qatar too. Yeah, I have a webcomic up on Tapas. Okay, what is the difference between Tapas and Webtoon? Is there a benefit to picking one over the other?
Uh, Tapas is formatted. My understanding from what I've seen, they seem to be formatted a little better for desktop, whereas Webtoons is better for phones. But Webtoons also like standard comic format, like I use, that are like pages, don't look good formatted for Webtoons because they don't like different size panels in the scroll work. So if you can format them all so that they go, thumb up, panel, 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 then it's a better fit for the way that Webtoons looks.
All right, he says, yeah, he says that there's barely any difference between the two. Although I think the content, like the kind of user base, is different. Like I've heard there's a lot more romance stuff on Tapas than there is on Webtoon. Let's see. Nacho says, "Tell me more about Carl." Well, let's see. We could talk about Carl, the cartoonist, but
I think Carl
alternatively,
can speak for himself. He has a voice, yes.
he might. I've never talked to him before.
That's true, right?
He might be like he might actually be an alien or something like that, like from outer space. Let's see. Tapas has a lot of manga-esque romance. Oh boy, this entails things that I'm not sure I want to know. Let me see. Alternatively, we could talk about Carl Weezer from Jimmy Neutron. He was voiced by Rob Paulson, who was the voice of Raphael in the original Ninja Turtles cartoon. That floored me as an adult, finding out that Carl Weezer was voiced by Raphael. Uh, I'm actually really jealous. My girlfriend actually gets to go meet Rob Paulson in a couple of months and get some stuff signed by him, and I can't come with her, and that makes me so mad. Okay, he says Carl says nothing too sexy. Like, gotta keep it PG-13. So I'm glad to hear that. um, let's see. And Scott says, "Gag me with a spoon." I believe he's talking about the. He could be talking about my affection for Rob Paulson, or he could be talking about um, the manga-esque romance. And then Carl says, "Rob Paulson is the best man." And yeah, like I said, I would really love to go with her. They also have oh, Carl, you probably know this. Who was the voice of the Brain? Like Rob Paulson did Pinky and Pinky and the Brain, but who is the voice of the Brain? Because she's also going to see him, and they're both in the new Ninja Turtles show. Um, oh, let's see. I think Wallace Shawn is also going to be there. Was it Maurice LaMarche? Was that the voice of? That might
I,
have been it.
I do not recall.
I don't know. Like I love cartoons and voice actors and stuff like that. Like that gets me all in. That makes me happy.
So you might find this story. It's not my story. It's my friend's story. You might find it interesting. A couple of you have you are you familiar with Animaniacs?
Yes.
Okay. So my buddy Matt Johnson, who was the creator of the now ended webcomic called Cortland, he also does a webcomic called Out at Five now. Um, but he got a chance to uh, go up to the I'm trying to remember which one it was. The guy who was the voice of Yakko was at the Omaha convention a couple of years ago, and
Yako was that was Rob Paulson.
okay, but he was out there, and they did. He actually got to go up on stage and sing along with the "Nations of the World" song.
Oh my
They did
goodness,
live.
that sounds like a dream come true.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty awesome. And of course, Matt's a giant dork. If you ever hear this, Matt, it's just true. So he of course knows all the words. So, and as somebody who can Princess Bride, I'm not trying to cast aspersions, but it's just the facts.
I mean, no shame in being a dork. I think that's all. I think that's why we're all gathered here today. Scott says, "I love Rob Paulson's show on Nerdist, where he sits down with voice actors. I believe it's called Talking Tunes, and he still does it. Even though I think it made me really sad. I found out at one point he has, I think he has cancer in one form or another, and that always really gets me sad. Um, and then let me think. Rob Paulson's son apparently actually runs the popular gaming channel, Game Explain, or he's one of the guys on there apparently. And um, like if I was going to meet Rob Paulson, nudge nudge girlfriend, if you're watching this, um, that's one of the things I would ask him is because I've heard that rumor and it might be true, but I've never actually bothered to look too much into it. And I think that'd be really cool because it's actually a YouTube channel I followed for the longest time. Let's see, just waiting on. Let's see. Do we still have Nacho, or did he pass out because it's like 4 in the morning?
I don't know. It's possible. It's possible.
We'll give him a traditional Viking funeral, even though we found out that he's not Viking linked.
Well, there could be crossover. We don't know. His last
It's a
name.
crossover. It's a special. Oh, he's still here. Hooray. We don't have to light him on fire. Let's see. So is Reese's story like Sky High? Did you ever watch Sky High?
I did watch Sky High, and
Bruce
I'll tell
Campbell
you,
was in it.
I'm not a huge fan. But
Really? I
yeah,
actually liked it compared to a lot of the other Disney Channel movies.
here's part of the thing that I didn't like about it was that like I didn't find like the motivations. I thought it was a little too predictable. It was too tween Disney is really what it comes down to. The there was there the level of teen politics was put on at this at in sacrifice of the story. Um, it just really felt really forced to me in a lot of ways. I didn't buy the motivations of most of the characters. And it wasn't that it was bad; it just wasn't great. But probably the bigger reason is that two, I think maybe I think it was 2 years before Sky High was released, we started doing Forces of Good and Evil, which is also about a superhero and villain high schools. It's actually two schools, right? And we started as about the same time people started like tuning into our webcomic. They were like, "Oh, it's like Sky High." No, it's not like Sky High.
Oh, I am. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. By the way, I had to switch into another room. So can you hear echo?
Yes.
All right, how bad is it?
I can tolerate it. What does the chat think? Do they hate you?
Let's see. Um, Let's see. Carl says My Hero Academia is Sky High the anime. Prove me wrong, and I think he's pretty right about that.
No, you can't.
Though I love My Hero
fact,
Academia from what I've seen so
in
far.
fact, the comments I've heard about Sky High, 15 years ago, are the same comments that people say to me about My Hero, and I'm just like, yeah, and I can't even argue with you. We're just My Hero, but old and on the web and not as good.
Oh, I'm really sorry about that. You get that feeling?
No, I'm not going to kid myself. The guys that put that a manga together, those guys are crazy talented. And
well, that's always crazy to me is that in the West, a lot of comics are there's a writer, there's an artist, there's a colorist, there's an editor. In Japan, or in a lot of manga, particularly a lot of the really big ones that become massive, they're all done by one. They're drawn and written by one person on a really tight schedule.
yeah, it's insane. And like this story, I'm the writer and the colorist. I'm actually working with a fellow in town who does the art. He's a retired gentleman, and it's the first draft of the pencil and ink work. And I've really enjoyed it. I mean, his name is Rolf. He's really good, and just really enjoy. I enjoy working with him, and he's got a really quick turnaround on stuff too. So, but when we started, if you ever go back to the archives, the original artist team was I did inks, and my buddy Chris, and we created the concept together. And he does the pencil work. So,
See, I'd love to do some stuff like this with my friends if we had more time. Like, and granted, they're not as interested in these types of things as I am, but I would just like that'd be great to work with other people and stuff like this. Okay, so I moved rooms. How is the audio now?
oh, that's awesome.
Like, you noticing any difference?
Oh yeah, it's much better.
All right. You still there, Reese?
Oh yeah.
Okay, just I was just worried if something had happened. So yeah, what do you think of the audio now? Because I've switched rooms once again.
Oh yeah, it's good.
Okay, good. The one room I was in, it's like a newer room. I guess we're still kind of breaking it in. So there's more of an echo.
A newer room.
Yeah, we remodeled a room in our house, so like we're still kind of moving things around and getting rid of echo and stuff like that.
I was the other thing I was going to say is how does one break in a room?
Well, it's kind of like you're getting used to it, deciding where you want and everything. We've mostly got everything where we want, but there are just some boxes and stuff thrown across. I think it's mostly the way we want it. So let's see. They're talking about anime a lot in the chat. So let's see. Scott says, in a time where both Sky High and Zoom are movies, both are my guilty pleasures. Nacho says, I don't read manga or watch anime apart from Studio Ghibli, which I feel very embarrassed to say this in front of all these, fellow comics and cartoonist aficionados. I have not seen anything by Studio Ghibli, aside from like a nostalgia critic review of Ponyo.
Intense. Those guys are just nuts talented. I would suggest if you're wanting to dip your toe into it, their version of the Borrowers, it's called The Secret World of Arietti.
Oh, I've heard. Yeah, I remember seeing commercials for that, and I thought that looks
ridiculously good. And it's a Western story. It's a very European story, so there's the narrative does not take a lot to get into. It's definitely been reinterpreted for a Japanese audience, and you can understand that. But it's still a very Western story, so it doesn't feel foreign. The music is done by a Breton harper named Cecile Corbel, and she is ridiculously good. But the art is, I mean, the animation is just, it's amazing. It's an emotional experience. I'm not even, I
That's what
mean,
I've heard from a lot of people about the Ghibli films,
so
and that's why I really want to check them out.
yeah.
But
I
yeah,
mean,
and
I
then
like a lot of Ghibli stuff. Of the stuff that I've seen, probably my least favorite is Howl's Moving Castle.
oh
I
really?
think
Because
it's a,
that's the one that everyone loves.
well, yeah, I'm kind of that guy, but I mean, it's not bad. It's just it's a little heavy-handed. It was made during the Gulf War as an anti-war trope, and so it kind of takes away from the original novel to tell that story a little bit. Um, but it's still, and I don't, but it's still phenomenal. It's just not my favorite.
Like I got these movies on a list now to check out. I guess like I because the animation I've definitely seen. It looks great. Um,
Yeah. Oh, it is. I mean, it's still top notch production. I just I I am not as, and when I first saw it, it felt like there was something that was kind of missing from the story, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And then I went back and read more about it, and some they to make his anti-war point, um, they cut out some of the narrative about the world building that I thought would have made it better.
oh, okay. See, I'll have to get this. Like, I'll have to get there and like learn and like really see it for myself. Because I mean, when you have the words "moving castle" in your title, you've got me hooked.
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
Um,
it's remarkable. It's
oh, so
absolute
let's see. Oh,
a
oh,
feat.
sorry. I'm just reading off the chat again. Most anime manga is pretty dumb, but there are gems here and there. I'll kind of agree to that, but I do have quite a few anime that I do enjoy a lot. Like I really really love Dragon Ball, particularly Z Kai, but the whole series like Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super, I actually enjoy quite a bit, and I like GT so far. As much as the internet will skewer me for saying that, it's kind of campy, but it's also kind of charming in a way. Um, let's see. People in college were putting me off from reading manga because they were crazy SJWs. I'm not gonna lie, that's actually an effect that's happened to me with a couple of shows where like someone was really crazy, or like a lot of the people surrounding it, or the people that recommended it to me, were like the really radical activist people in college. So I would kind of like put it on my back burner to check out. Like I wouldn't pay as much attention to it, but that's a little mean of me to say. But yeah, it's negative experiences and stuff like they can really shape your view of things. Oh, let's see. Scott
Definitely
says a
agree.
show I'd recommend to anyone looking for something good is Drifters. It's a show that takes the antagonists of history and portrays them as the good guys. And it throws them into a Tolkien fan. Okay, I'm looking that up now. That sounds awesome. Oh, I have to check it out. Who doesn't like studio? Barry says, "Who doesn't like Studio Ghibli?" Oh yeah, it's Reese. Reese is that guy. I think it's kind of interesting. He spells like your name is Rhys, but he's spelling it like candy in the comments.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, the funny thing about that is that my birth name is Reese. And that's what it has on my birth certificate. When my family came over from Wales, it was just Rees. I use the ancient Welsh form of the name as a pen name because I think it looks good on paper.
Yeah, so I was talking to my friend about that the other day. His pen
It was
name,
all about marketing. So I
yeah,
use the um,
like the Mick Jerkface thing. It gets people's attention, and that's why I started using it.
and so one of the things is even though people like a lot of times people mispronounce it, they pronounce it rice, which is where the English name rice comes from. It's from people
Oh
mis
wow, that's
Reese.
that's cool. Bit of history there.
So like Vincent Price, right? His family was Welsh, and Price is Ap Rhys, right, son of Rhys, and that became Price. His mutated there. But anyway, his but yeah, so but even though people mispronounce it, they don't forget the spelling, and so it sticks out. That's why I did it that way.
I like that. Oh, so let's see. Nachos, I believe he's talking to me with this one. He says, check out Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, Ranya, or Ranja, maybe I'm saying it wrong, and Kiki's Delivery Service. Okay, yeah, I'll make a mental list of all of these right now. Barry says yes to all of those. Spirited Away is my favorite. The 2005 Ghost in the Shell season 1 and 2 are amazing. And he says, and in response to the candy comment that I made, he says, haha, that's because he's the fake Reese.
That's a very Barry thing to say.
Berry. It's like a flavor. So see, Scott's talking about drifters. He says it's got Oda Nobunaga, Butch Cassidy, and the Sundance Kid, even Count Saint Germain, and a bunch of other cool dudes, with the bad guys being martyrs of history like Saint Joan, or sorry, that's a Catholic slip of the tongue, Joan of Arc. Yeah, I'm actually like now he's got my attention. Yeah, okay. Have you ever seen Django Unchained?
Yes.
The other part where the Candy says, "Gentlemen, at first you had my curiosity. Now you have my attention." And so he's kind of got me with here with this premise. Mm-hmm. 12 episodes, drawn by the same author and studio who did Hellsing Ultimate. That's a show I've heard quite a bit about. I have a cousin who is absolutely crazy about anime, and that is a show that he loves.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about it, but I haven't taken the time to look into it at all.
It's cheating to say, but Castlevania. I love the Netflix Castlevania.
I didn't even know there was a Netflix Castlevania.
Okay, so imagine Castlevania, but with like an M rating. Um, so young Matt is the villain. Oh,
Ba, ba, ba.
I'm a bad guy now. I don't know what I did. Help me.
I don't know.
Oh, let's see. I'd like to see. I want to know where that came from. Let's see. Uh, Nacho says I hate Harry Potter, and this is unrelated, but the leaked Harry Potter game looks good. One, how can you not like Harry Potter? And two, there's a video game. Like that actually sounds like fun.
Well, I think he can not like Harry Potter because being a Brit like he is, that's all anyone will ask him about from America for the last
Does
years.
he? Yeah. Can he go traveling through his fireplace and stuff like
So,
that?
so is there actually a platform 9 3/4? No.
You're free to try. You're free to go run yourself into the wall there.
Please, for the love of God, just run into the hole. Look, I will buy for your ticket just so you do it, but you have to do it twice.
um, man, that just like as a kid when I was reading that, that was so like I could never even knowing that people could walk through that wall, I would be like panicked about it. Um, Also, it's rowling, not rolling, not rowling up. Um, it's not rowling?
No, it's rolling.
What?
Bigger
Not
boat.
what the? Oh, he says sorry. The Django reference. Oh, he says that because like I was quoting the bad guy from Django.
Oh, okay. That's right. I forgot.
Yeah, I'll take being the villain. You know that guy. All the nice stuff that John Candy does, or not. Okay, John Candy. No, that was the comedian. What was the guy's name from Django? It was something Candy.
John? Oh,
No, because the thing is, John Candy was a separate comedian who did the all-time classic Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
yeah. Well, I'm familiar with John Candy. I was a child in the 80s. I saw the block.
That movie was like that's still such a great movie to this day.
It is. It is a really good movie.
So he says he also hates Doctor Who. Oh my.
Alone there, pal.
Yeah, okay, I love Doctor Who.
I fail to
I don't
understand
I
the
haven't kept up
appeal
with it.
entirely.
I haven't kept up with Doctor Who, but Uncle Buck dude or the Tommy Boy dude. Um I think what was the guy who was the guy that Leonardo DiCaprio played in Django? That's the character I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, if only there was some device right in front of me that would allow me to look this stuff up, but it makes for it makes for interesting conversation fodder. So I'm gonna leave it to you guys. Let's see. Oh no. Let's see. Fine. What are some American things you hate, Nacho? So like, you've talked about some of the British things that you do not like, but what are some of the American things that you really don't like? Oh no, they're talking about comedians. I thought they were talking about Django. Chris Farley, I believe Chris Farley was apparently supposed to be Shrek at one point before they had Mike Myers.
Yep. Chris Farley's untimely death was the changing of things.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that. I remember somebody actually had footage of him like doing some of the dialogue from Shrek, and they had actually brought that up, and like it had it laid out to some animatics from Shrek. And I know it's a meme, but Shrek must be one of my favorite movies ever made, if I'm going to be 100% honest. Okay, Nacho says Shameless is better than the US. The UK's version of Shameless is better than the US one. I also hate Big Bang Theory. Friends too.
Yeah, Big Bang Theory is garbage. Shameless is too honest to watch. I can't watch it. I'm in the field and I cannot watch that show. It is
Or
unreal.
Scott says he does not like British humor. To me, or if when we're talking about British humor, we're talking about that really like observational.
You got a last question.
Um,
Are you talking about Benny Hill or Faulty Towers? Because those aren't the same thing.
to me, when I think of British humor, I think of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I feel like that's a very uniquely British book. Watch Old Red Dwarf.
I've heard really good things about that. Not had the chance to see it myself,
Yet I've
though.
heard really good things about that I've never gotten around to is the Discworld. I've never read it. I've been recommended it. People keep saying it sounds like something you would write, and I never got around to it. It says, yeah, BBT is crap. Let's see. Oh, okay, Big Bang Theory. That's down to a matter of opinion. See, the thing is, like everybody, I've never really watched it myself to form an opinion. I know that the internet um, does not like the show very much. And but the thing is, I can't never bring myself to like hate it as much as the rest of the world because my whole family, as well as my girlfriend, love the show. So like to me, it's just like you know, it's almost like on the inside. Like I'm blushing really hard saying this because I guess it just shows how much my family means to me. When let's see, oh man, oh yes, Douglas Adams, The Young Ones was awesome, and Scott says I'm a 2.5 men guy, and I've never seen the show abbreviated like because whenever I've only ever heard the show through reference like vocally, so I've always heard it as 2.5 men. Which I mean, technically, you could
I
read
think of
that
the
as
Big
two and a
Bang
half men.
Theory. And then honestly, it's about time I got to get out of here. But here's my take on the Big Bang Theory because I dislike it with like the passion of 1,000 burning suns.
I could hear it in your voice.
Oh my God, I hate it so much. So I am not a scientist by trade, but I am smart and I'm a giant dork. And the Big Bang Theory is the way squares and millennials think smart people act. That's not how smart people act.
I can see that. Yeah, I can understand that point of view.
And it's like no. It's like when you I can't even think about how to explain it beyond that. You ever seen that T-shirt? Um, you people that think they know everything really piss off those of us that really do.
My brother actually was wearing that just the other day. The same brother I've referred to like at least 50 times
Yeah.
in the stream.
That is the feeling I get every time that damn show is on.
Hmm.
I just can't stand it.
Well, let's see. He says if you like something, there's nothing to apologize for. Like, well, it's not so much that I like it. It's more that like other people that I know really like it, and I can't bring myself to hate it.
So
I'm one of the few who Firefly. Barry, I think everybody likes Firefly. I mean, I never watched the whole thing the way through, but that was something that everybody loved. I thought.
yeah, Firefly's pretty good. One guy who hates it, and I find it really bizarre that he does, because the same reason he hates it, or kind of the reason I like it, is Chuck Dixon hates Firefly. He thinks it's cheap. And I can see where he's coming from with it, but I still really, really like it.
See, that's the thing is like sometimes you can still appreciate you can still have deep passion for a bit of media like a comic book or a story or a show, and you can still have the flaws pointed out to you, and you'll still be like, I still like it.
Well, I think part of it too is because Dixon's been a writer as long as he has at the level he has, that he sees all of the gears. And I mean, I have this happen too with certain stories, and there's just some story things I can't let go because it's just like, no, that's like The Last Jedi. I hated it on every level because it offended my sensibilities on every level. As a fan, as a creator, as a student of history, everything, philosophically, religiously, everything I hated about that movie. Um, and so I think it may be something like that, but I don't know. I mean, but I still love Firefly.
Let's
I
see down here.
love Whedon's other stuff, and I honestly think that the reason Firefly has value has more to do with his co-creator Tim Minier than it has to do with Whedon. But that's a discussion for another time. So I do got to go though. So and I'm hosting the stream, so I think if I drop out, everything else has to go too.
Everyone else gets, yeah, it's the good old ways of how first person shooters used to work online is they used to use this host type of gameplay where like if the host left, everyone else got kicked. The host had bad connection and everyone else was suffering. Um, but yeah, I don't know why I'm thinking about that. I guess I just have Gears of War on my mind again. But let's see. Just to wrap out the chat, let's see. American comedy is too happy, says Nachos. Um, I guess I can kind of understand that. When
Depends
thinking
on
about
the
me,
comedy.
really
It
mainstream
really
comedy.
depends on the comedy.
Yeah, I mean, comedy is a really wide thing. Let's see. So that's kind of the whole joke that it was canceled for one season. Oh, okay, so Barry's kind of still mad about the cancellation. And
Well,
let's see. Scott says goodbye. Have a good night. Barry says good night to Scott. Yeah, thank you so much for showing up, Scott. It was a lot of fun. I had a blast. Thank you for hosting the stream, Matt.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. I plan on doing this as every week if we can. I think that's something we ought to do. So
I'd be happy to. Like I just got to work it out because like I might not be able to do it every week,
we'll
but
see.
I'd love to have the hangout. Like I mean, I loved having everybody show up. I loved reading the comments. I loved learning bits of history that I didn't learn in school. Um,
That's what I do.
but it was a
Listen,
lot of fun.
I had kind of the Barbary Wars that was something special. You missed it. So we'll have to.
And I feel like we had a pretty good turnout for our first stream too.
Yes, yes, we did. Hopefully, you guys who are, if anybody's still in the chat, tell your friends. And I'm going to plug a little bit of plugging since the stream was actually the stream wasn't my idea. I was trying to spread some seeds a few weeks ago and convince Matt to start showing me his cartooning because I knew it was there. I could hear it. I could see it behind his text that there's just something that needed to come out there. And I knew I knew there was something out there. But he said we should stream, and I said, hey, that's a great idea. But because I am hosting, I'm going to go ahead and plug my company, Ideal Comics. You can check us out at idealcomics.net or Patreon /Ideal Comics, Ideal_Comics. We do comics, put new pages up twice a week, Mondays and Fridays. And if you like what you see, throw us some coins. Matt, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. The Mattriarchy will reign as long as the Matts continue to persevere. And I think that's the thing to think about. So,
Oh yeah. Like I hope to do this for a long time. Especially, I love the sense of community. Like it was great getting to read the comments.
and
That's not
it's
something you normally get to say on the internet.
so. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. I'm going to bow out and have a great one.
All right. See you guys.